Would Leia ever forgive Anakin for his atrocities as Darth Vader? In Legends, while Leia refused to forgive her father when his Force ghost confronted her face to face, she did later make peace with him to some degree, sympathizing with the boy who was once Anakin Skywalker after venturing to Tatooine and reading some of Shmi Skywalker's old journal entries about Anakin. And in canon, on the other hand, as it stands right now, Leia never forgave her father for what he did as Darth Vader. But the question is, would she, or how likely would it be for her to do so at some point? The harsh reality seems to be that Leia didn't forgive her father. She never seemed to get over the fear and the anger and the resentment she had over who Anakin was and what he'd personally done to her, and that's evidenced in the fact that she never told her son about him, and that she and Han raised Ben with a level of caution and hesitancy that wouldn't have been there if Vader weren't her father. Leia's continued disdain for Vader is actually made pretty clear in the Bloodline novel, and that story is set well over 2 decades after Return of the Jedi, so the only time that I could really see Leia forgiving Anakin would have been after her son fell to the dark side, because we know that Leia obviously sympathized with Ben and desperately wanted him to come back to her, so after seeing him fall, she probably came to view Anakin in a different light as well. And also, in Bloodline, Leia does actually have a moment where she thinks about her father as Anakin Skywalker rather than Darth Vader, and she wonders if his fall to the dark side could have been born out of love rather than greed, which to a certain extent, of course it was, but Leia doesn't know that. Now, does Leia developing some sympathy for Anakin over the years mean that she forgave him? No. Forgiveness is a bit different than just coming to terms with things, in my opinion. Leia had every reason to absolutely despise her biological father, to hate him with all her heart, to disown him, and to never forgive him for anything. And it's even possible that the resentment she held for Anakin could have grown after Ben's fall, because again, if it weren't for him, Ben probably wouldn't have fallen to the dark side. We're talking about a man in Vader who not only abused, enslaved, and murdered millions of innocent people, but also a man who kidnapped Leia, personally tortured her, and then brought her to witness the destruction of her home world. This is the man who slaughtered Obi-Wan right in front of her, who tortured Han Solo, and who chopped off her brother's hand. The man responsible for the death of her biological mother and her adoptive parents. This man destroyed Leia's life multiple times over, including many instances long after his death. Luke brought their father back in the end, and Anakin did transcend through the light to become a Force ghost. But Leia was not there for that. She didn't have the interactions that Luke did with Anakin. She didn't believe in him the way that Luke did. She saw him for the horrible man he'd personally shown her he was. And furthermore, Leia didn't necessarily always show the most compassion to her enemies in the way that Luke did to begin with. Not that she had any reason to do so in this particular instance, but in that way, Leia was sort of more like Anakin, while Luke was more like his mother. And so with all of that in mind, my thought is that while it might be nice to see Leia forgive Anakin from a certain point of view, I actually don't know that it's the best storytelling route. Leia forgiving Anakin anytime before Ben's fall doesn't fit very well into the current continuity, and her doing so afterwards in any direct sort of way really isn't necessary. I think it makes sense that she almost certainly did gain some compassion for Anakin, especially after Ben's fall to the dark side gave her some new perspective, but to flat out forgive Anakin for his atrocities and for the things he personally did to her and the ones she loved, I honestly think that's relatively unlikely given Leia's personality, at least until her much later years. It may be the idealistic Jedi thing to do, but Leia gave up her Jedi path, and there may be more than one reason for that. She was a wonderful person with a big heart, but Anakin may have went too far even for Leia. And really, when you think about it, this route wouldn't differ all that much from the Legends concept. No, Leia wasn't confronted directly by Anakin's Force ghost in canon, at least there's no indication that he did as of right now, but all Leia really did in that old story was make peace with the reality of Darth Vader being her father in her own mind, which is something that I could definitely see happening in the years after Ben Solo turned to the dark side, because Leia would probably come to see how her fear and hatred for Vader contributed to Ben's turn, and so there was likely a lot of self-reflection and deep thought on Leia's part after that, and through that, I think Leia could make peace with Anakin, not really for him, but more so for herself. Ultimately, forgiveness isn't always about the person you're forgiving. It's often about letting go of the resentment or the disappointment you have in them because their mistakes aren't yours to carry. It's about being at peace with who you are, letting the past die, so to speak, and moving forward free of the shackles of whatever past conflicts have been holding you back. In this case, the actions and the legacy of Darth Vader. So to sum it up, I don't think Leia ever forgave Anakin directly because the two probably never interacted with each other, considering Anakin's Force Ghost never seems to have communed with anyone besides Luke on very rare occasion and maybe Ahsoka, and because I just don't think Leia would have until after Ben's fall to the dark side at the earliest. But she did come to view him in a different light, and I do think that sometime after Ben's fall, there is a reasonable chance that she made peace with Anakin in her own mind, and eventually, perhaps after transcending into the Force, she could have even forgiven him face to face. But what do you guys think the likelihood is that Leia would verbally forgive Anakin, not necessarily even to him, but maybe to Luke or to Han or to somebody else that was really close to her? And then what are the chances that Leia just held on to that anger for her entire life until the very end? Let me know what you guys think. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to drop a like to support the channel, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and remember, the Force will be with you always.